Welcome back to the channel, where every night brings a new tale of courage, mystery, and heart-pounding drama. Before we dive into tonight's story, let us know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. And if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell, because tomorrow's episode is one you won't want to miss. A royal secret, a silent betrayal. What happens next might just change everything. Now settle in, because this story starts with a single whisper in the dark. He walked into a trap alone. But what happened next shocked the entire kingdom. The sun dipped low over the skyline of Varenford, casting a golden hue across the palace walls as the city buzzed with excitement. Tonight was no ordinary evening. It was the night of the royal gala, the most prestigious event of the year, where nobility, politicians, celebrities, and dignitaries from all corners of the kingdom gathered in one breathtaking display of wealth, unity, and national pride. Inside the palace ballroom, the chandeliers glittered like stardust. Soft classical music floated through the air as elegantly dressed guests sipped champagne and mingled beneath the towering columns and golden ceiling. Every surface gleamed. Every detail had been meticulously arranged. But while the guests were caught in the glamour, one man stood apart, watchful, alert, and quietly tense. Captain Jack Harris, commander of the King's Royal Guard, stood near the marble balcony that overlooked the entire room. At 38, he was the embodiment of discipline, broad-shouldered, sharply dressed in full ceremonial uniform, and known throughout the ranks as a man who never let emotion cloud his judgment. His short-cropped dark hair was beginning to gray at the temples, and his jaw was set with a quiet resolve. He had attended more royal events than he could count, yet tonight something felt wrong. His sharp blue eyes scanned the crowd, not with admiration, but with intent. Every smile, every hand movement, every shift in posture, he tracked them all. His right index finger tapped rhythmically against the hilt of his ceremonial sword, a subtle habit he had developed over years of frontline service. It was the kind of nervous tic he tried to suppress, but tonight, it surfaced like a warning. Bell he couldn't ignore. A soft voice broke his concentration. "Captain Harris, something on your mind?" asked Lieutenant Sarah Monroe, his second in command. She stood at his side, eyes following his line of sight. Sarah, just 29, was one of the youngest lieutenants to earn a spot in the elite guard, but she had proven herself more than capable. Her sleek black hair was pulled into a flawless bun, and her uniform, perfectly pressed and gleaming, reflected her meticulous nature. Jack didn't answer immediately. He drew a slow breath, his jaw tightening slightly. "Something doesn't sit right with me," he muttered, his tone low. "I can't explain it, but there's a tension in the air, like we're all dancing in the eye of a storm we can't see yet." Sarah's expression shifted. The room behind them continued to sparkle with laughter and music, but her attention had narrowed. She trusted Jack's instincts. Everyone did. If he said something was off, it was worth taking seriously. "You want me to run a secondary sweep?" she asked, already adjusting the communicator on her wrist. "Yes," Jack replied without hesitation. "Check all entrances and exits, and more importantly, keep a close eye on the emergency control panel. If anything happens, that's where they'll strike first." Sarah gave a short, precise nod. "On it." As she disappeared into the crowd, Jack remained by the balcony, his senses heightened. He could still hear the violinists, the clinking of glasses, the hum of idle conversation. But behind it all, there was an unease creeping in. He didn't have proof, didn't have evidence, just a gut feeling, the kind that had saved lives before, and then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw him, a man in a dark suit, unusually still, standing far too close to the emergency control panel. His face was forgettable, almost suspiciously so, and his posture stiff, calculating. Jack's pulse quickened. Something was about to happen. He could feel it, and it was going to start right here, in this room filled with power, secrets, and unsuspecting targets. The man in the dark suit didn't blink. He stood there like a statue, his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes fixed on the palace's emergency control panel, as if memorizing every button, every sequence. To most, he might have looked like just another bored guest. But to Captain Jack Harris, he stood out like a flare in a fog. Jack's instincts screamed. This wasn't paranoia. This was experience clawing at the back of his mind, warning him that danger wasn't just coming, it was already here. He started to move, slowly cutting through the crowd, trying not to cause alarm. But he was too late. The lights flickered. And then the world exploded. A thunderous blast shook the palace. It was as if the very earth beneath the marble floor had cracked open. Chandeliers swayed violently, a few crashing down in showers of glass. The once serene ballroom was instantly swallowed by screams, panic, and pure chaos. Smoke billowed from hidden vents, pouring into the room like a dark tide. The music died mid-note. People stumbled over one another, some screaming, others frozen, in place paralyzed by fear. Gowns and tuxedos were no longer symbols of elegance. They became burdens as terrified guests tried to flee through the choking fog. Jack didn't hesitate. "Sarah!" he shouted, his voice cutting through the bedlam like a blade. "The emergency override now!" From across the ballroom, Lieutenant Sarah Monroe emerged like a shadow in motion. She sprinted toward the control panel, pushing through the panicked crowd, her boots sliding on broken glass. But the man in the suit was already there. He moved with eerie calm, as if the explosion had been no surprise at all. He reached out toward the panel, his fingers poised like a pianist about to strike a final deadly chord. "Stop him!" Jack roared. The man smirked and pressed a device, small, unassuming, deadly, against the panel. Sparks flew. The lights blinked and dimmed again. Warning tones shrieked through the ballroom as control systems faltered, their circuits fried. The panel was rigged, disabled. The palace was wide open now, vulnerable. Sarah dove for the man, tackling him just as he turned. But he was fast. Too fast. He shoved her away with shocking strength. She crashed against a table but rolled quickly, recovering with grit in her eyes. Jack reached her side seconds later, grabbing her by the arm. "You hurt?" he asked. "I'm fine," she said, breathing hard. "But the panel's toast. If we don't get to the backup control room, the palace is exposed. No defenses, no lockdown, nothing." Jack's jaw tightened. He glanced around. The smoke was getting thicker, stinging his eyes, burning his lungs. Screams still echoed. Somewhere alarms blared in a jagged rhythm. "Then we move," he said. "Now." They ducked through the crowd, weaving between overturned tables and collapsed pillars. The main doors loomed ahead. Jack placed a hand on the handle. His voice, low, "Stay close, eyes up. We don't know what's waiting out there." He pushed the door open. The palace corridor, once pristine and polished, now looked like a war zone. Smoke trailed along the walls. Debris littered the floor. In the distance, heavy footsteps echoed, some running, others creeping. It was impossible to tell who was friend and who was foe. Jack and Sarah moved quickly, keeping low, hugging the walls. Each corner they turned felt like it might be their last. Then Jack froze. He raised a hand to stop Sarah. "Wait, you hear that?" She paused, listening. Voices, faint but clear, coming from the stairwell below. Jack's voice was barely a whisper. They're already at the lower levels. He turned to Sarah, locking eyes with her. "We're out of time." Her nod was all the confirmation he needed. The mission had just changed. Now it wasn't just about protecting the palace. It was about survival, and whatever was coming next would demand everything they had. Jack gripped the stairwell handle, his knuckles white, his breath shallow. Smoke coiled through the air like a living thing, trailing from the ballroom behind them. The soft hum of voices below grew louder, calm, coordinated, and definitely not guards. He turned to Lieutenant Sarah Monroe. Her face was pale, but her eyes were sharp, focused. "They're down there," Jack muttered. "Armed, waiting." Sarah nodded. Then we hit fast and hard. Jack pulled his sidearm, chambered around, and took a steadying breath. "Stay behind me. If things go south, you push through to that control room, no matter what. Sarah hesitated, just a beat. Understood, she said, though the weight in her voice betrayed her concern. They moved as one. The stairwell door creaked open into a haze of dim light. Metal groaned somewhere in the darkness below. Jack took point, descending silently, weapon, raised Sarah just steps behind. The voices became clearer now, low, muffled, communicating in code. At the bottom of the stairs, shadows shifted. Jack stepped onto the landing, and it began. A masked figure spun around, weapon raised. Jack didn't wait. He fired. The gunshot echoed through the stairwell like thunder. Yeah, man dropped, but not before returning fire. Bullets screamed past Jack's head, slamming into the wall behind him, spraying concrete dust into the air. Go! Jack shouted. Sarah bolted, sprinting down the opposite flight toward the backup control room, her boots clanging against the metal steps. Another enemy emerged from the smoke, firing blindly. Jack dove for cover behind the concrete rail, landing hard on his shoulder. He winced, teeth clenched, then popped back up and returned fire. Rounds ricocheted off the walls. One grazed his upper arm, hot and sharp like a branding iron. Blood began to soak through his sleeve, but he pushed forward, his mind singularly focused on buying time. A fire extinguisher hung to his left. Jack yanked it free and hurled it down the stairs. It crashed loudly, drawing one of the attackers from cover. Jack took the shot. The man crumpled and the others scattered. Jack descended another level, fast and low. He could still hear Sarah's footsteps, lighter now, fading into the maze of basement corridors. She was close, but so were the enemy. A bullet slammed into the wall just inches from his head. Jack hit the ground, heart pounding. His gun, nearly empty. The odds, worsening. Still, he moved. Meanwhile, Sarah reached the steel door of the backup control room. Her fingers flew across the keypad, heart thundering in her chest. Come on, she whispered. Come on. The lock clicked. She slipped inside and slammed the door shut behind her. The room was cold, dim, and buzzing with power. Rows of dusty monitors lit up as she powered on the system. Her fingers danced across the keyboard, initiating the emergency reboot. A progress bar crept slowly forward. Outside, the gunfire grew louder. Sarah swallowed her fear. Please work, she whispered. Back in the stairwell, Jack was bleeding, out of breath and nearly out of ammo. He fired his last 2 rounds, dropping one more attacker. Then the click of an empty magazine. He backed into a corner, his shoulder pressed to cold concrete. Dust swirled around him. Shadows moved closer. One of the masked men stepped forward, gun aimed at Jack's chest. Drop it, the man said flatly. Jack raised empty hands, then an alarm blared. The stairwell lights flickered, then flared to full brightness. Sirens screamed to life. The palace security systems were back online. Jack grinned through bloodied lips. Took you long enough, Lieutenant. The attackers froze. Then ran. Jack didn't chase them. He dropped to one knee, breathing hard. He didn't need to follow them. They were too late. The palace was back in the fight, and now, so was he. The blaring alarms echoed like a war cry through the palace's hollow, battered halls. Captain Jack Harris emerged from the stairwell, wounded but unbroken. His arm throbbed from the earlier gunfire, but he barely felt it. All he could think about was the mission. The system was back online. The palace had power, but it wasn't over. Not even close. As he staggered into the corridor, Sarah Monroe was already waiting, standing by the control room door. Her face was streaked with soot, but her eyes burned with resolve. You did it, Jack said, his voice hoarse. Sarah nodded, her breath still catching. Systems are live. Reinforcements are en route. But before either could breathe, the floor trembled. Another explosion, this one distant, toward the east wing. Jack's stomach dropped. The royal quarters. They didn't need to speak. They ran, down smoke-choked halls, past wounded guards and shattered pillars. The once majestic corridors were now reduced to ruin. Furniture burned. Priceless portraits lay in splinters on the floor. The palace had become a battlefield. As they neared the east wing, Jack skidded to a stop. The door to the royal family's Private residence was cracked open. From inside, muffled voices. He raised a fist, signaling Sarah to halt. Slowly, he crept forward, pressed his ear against the door. "The king is secure. Get him to the van before the guards regroup." The voice was cold, efficient. Jack's pulse spiked. He motioned to Sarah, "Go in fast." Jack kicked the door open. Gunfire erupted instantly. Masked men inside swung their rifles toward the door, but Jack and Sarah moved like lightning. Jack dropped one with a shot to the chest. Sarah followed up with 2 more, sharp and precise. The remaining men returned fire, bullets chewing through the elegant woodwork and gilded walls. Jack dove behind an overturned desk, gasping for air. "Cover me," he shouted. Sarah popped up, unleashing a rapid burst. Jack sprinted toward the king's private study. He burst through the doors, empty, but the window was wide open, curtains blowing in the smoky breeze. "Elena!" Jack shouted, using Sarah's real name in a rare slip. "He's gone!" She appeared, behind him, face pale. "Gone? How?" Jack's voice cracked. "They've got him, and they're moving fast. No time to waste." They tore through the east hall, bullets still echoing behind them. As they neared the palace courtyard, a wounded guard slumped against a wall caught Jack's eye. It was Sergeant Cole Daniels, one of his most trusted men. Jack knelt beside him. "Cole, where's the king?" Daniels coughed blood. "East gate. Black van." Jack's jaw clenched. That gate was on the far side of the grounds. He turned to Sarah. "Stay with him, I'll go." "No," she snapped. "We go together." Jack hesitated, then nodded. "Let's move." They sprinted. The palace grounds were chaos. Flames danced in the gardens, sirens screamed. Guards shouted orders through clouds of smoke. But ahead, just beyond the gates, Jack spotted it. A black van, engine running, headlights slicing through the haze. 2 masked men stood beside it, and in their grasp, being forced into the back, was King Alexander. His wrists were bound. His crown was gone. His face was twisted with fear. "We're too late," Sarah whispered. "No," Jack growled. "We're not." He raised his weapon. Fired. 1 man dropped. The second turned, aiming wildly. Jack grabbed Sarah, pulling her behind. A marble column as bullets tore past them. The van roared to life. Jack didn't wait. He bolted from cover, legs burning, vision narrowing to a single goal. He leaped, catching the back bumper, dragging himself up as the van tore through the gate. Wind tore at his face. Gunshots echoed behind him, but he held on. He yanked the door open. Inside, the king slumped in the corner. A final attacker turned, weapon raised. Jack didn't blink. He fired once. The man collapsed. Jack slid to the king's side. "Your Majesty, are you hurt?" "No," the king rasped. "But they have my family." Jack's world slowed. The queen, the prince. This wasn't just an abduction, this was the beginning of something far worse. Jack Harris sat in the wrecked van, chest heaving, blood dripping from a fresh cut above his brow. The king leaned against the wall, shaken but alive. The attacker inside the vehicle lay motionless, a final threat neutralized. But the war was far from over. Then came the voice. It crackled through the van's radio, cold and mocking. "Captain Harris, we have your queen and your prince. If you want them back, come alone to the old refinery outside the city. No tricks, no backup, or they die." Jack froze. He recognized the voice. Calculated, ruthless, and the location, a rusted industrial, maze long abandoned, forgotten by most except those who planned in shadows. The king tried to sit up. "Jack, you can't go, it's a trap." Jack didn't argue, he knew it was, but what choice did he have? "I have to," he said quietly. "They'll expect a trap too. But they won't expect me to walk in with nothing but grit and a plan." Reached over, placed a firm hand on the king's shoulder. "Stay here, reinforcements are on their way. Tell them everything. If I don't come back, you will," the king cut in, his voice raw with fear and trust. "Bring them home." Jack nodded once, then climbed out of the van. His body ached, his muscles screamed, but his resolve was iron. The refinery loomed in the distance, rising from the darkness like a skeleton of steel and rust. He moved on foot, quiet, focused, his weapon drawn low, eyes scanning every shadow. The wind whistled through broken pipes and empty windows. It was dead silent, save for the crunch of gravel beneath his boots. As he stepped past the rusted gate, floodlights snapped on, harsh, blinding white. A speaker buzzed overhead. "Welcome, Captain Harris. You really did come alone. Brave or stupid. Let's see which." Jack didn't respond. He kept walking, deeper into the complex. Pipes hissed. Chains swung slowly above. It was a place built for one thing now: ambush. Then he saw them, high. Above, bound to a suspended catwalk, the Queen and the Prince, gagged wrists tied to metal railings. Their eyes locked on Jack, wide with fear. And then the man in the mask stepped out of the shadows. "Drop the weapon," he said, voice steady. "Let's talk." Jack didn't move. "You want to talk? You kidnapped the royal family. You blew up a palace. You call this diplomacy?" The man chuckled. "This isn't diplomacy, this is revolution. The monarchy's time is over. And your death, well, that sends the right message." Then he raised a signal. Figures stepped from the dark, rifles aimed. Jack was surrounded. Still, he smirked. "Funny thing about traps," he said. "They can snap both ways." And just like that, he moved. Jack dropped low, fired fast, rolled behind a rusted crate. 2 hostiles went down before the others could react. Gunfire erupted, deafening in the metal jungle. Jack pushed forward, ducking, firing, drawing them away from the catwalk. He moved like a storm, a blur of muscle, instinct, and will. But it was the masked leader he wanted. The man charged. Jack met him head-on. They crashed into each other, grappling, fists flying. Jack caught a punch to the jaw, then drove his shoulder into the man's ribs, sending him stumbling back. He followed with a swing of a loose pipe, knocking the man to the edge of the catwalk. "You should have stayed down," the man growled. Lunging, Jack dodged, twisted, and with one final shove sent him falling into the darkness below. Silence. Jack rushed to the Queen and Prince, cutting their bindings, pulling off their gags. "Are you okay?" The Queen nodded, tears running down her cheeks. "You saved us." Jack's voice was low, steady. "It's not over yet." As they escaped into the night, flames rose behind them. The refinery burned, and somewhere in the shadows more enemies waited. But for now, they were safe. And Jack? Harris had just declared war on anyone who dared threaten them again. What would you have done in Jack's place? Alone, wounded, outnumbered, but still choosing to walk straight into enemy territory to save the Queen and the Prince. That kind of courage, that kind of sacrifice. It's not just about muscle or firepower. It's about heart, conviction, and the will to stand tall even when everything's falling apart. We want to hear from you. Did this story keep you on the edge of your seat? Which moment hit you the hardest? The stairwell shootout, the rooftop rescue, or the final showdown? At the refinery? And more importantly, if you were Captain Jack Harris, would you have walked into that trap, knowing the risks? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and tell us where you're watching from. We're always amazed by how far these stories travel across the globe. Your voice matters, and your insights make this community stronger. And don't forget, subscribe and hit the notification bell, because tomorrow's chapter in this royal saga brings a twist no one saw coming. Darkness is rising again, and Jack's mission has only just begun.